The Jeremiah Patterson Show is about news, politics, and history. Have you ever thought about starting your own podcast? When I was trying to get this podcast off the ground, I had lots of questions. Like, how do I record an episode? How do I get my shows into all the apps people like to listen to? How do I make money from my podcasts? Well, the answer to every single one of those questions is really simple. Anchor. Anchor is a one-stop shop for recording, hosting, and distributing your podcast. Best of all, it's 100% free and ridiculously easy to use. And now Anchor can match you with the best. Anchor can just match you with the best with great sponsors who want to advertise your podcasts. That means you can get paid right away to start podcasting. In fact, that's what I'm doing right now by reading this ad. I've been podcasting for 2 years now on the Jeremiah Patterson Show, and I will tell you, Anchor is freaking amazing. The platform is absolutely easy to use and just fantastic. So, if you've always wanted to start a podcast and make money doing it, you can go to anchor.fm/start to join me in the diverse community of podcasters already using Anchor. Once again, that's anchor.fm/start. I can't wait to hear your podcast. Happy Sunday, and thank you for joining me today. We have a TJPS special report planned for you, and it's really important. But after reviewing more of its details and all the substance in of that information, I'm going to do more research for that report, and it will be produced soon. If you listened to last Sunday's episode, I talked about how Mr. John Smith would be coming on the show. John Smith is the CEO of John Smith Marketing. He was scheduled for an interview about a Black Lives Matter mural that was painted in Nashville, Tennessee. His company was orchestrating that entire event. But as of now, it looks like that interview has been canceled. The long-awaited TJPS special report on the situation in ICE detention facilities will be published this Thursday on my YouTube channel and also on the podcast. So it'll be like simultaneously broadcast. You will want to listen to that, so mark your calendars. But with that said, we are going to start tonight in Massachusetts. Apparently there is a coronavirus outbreak at the Sunny Acres Nursing and Rehabilitation Center. 5 residents are dead and 30 have been infected. This was a live report today by WCVB 5 News.
Inside the Sunny Acres Nursing and Rehab Facility. This week, 5 residents died from a COVID outbreak, while 47 residents and 17 staff have tested positive. 84-year-old Beverly Hedison lives at Sunny Acres and is healthy. We spoke with her son, David.
Do I believe that Sunny Acres is doing everything possible to keep her safe? 150%.
2 towns with major clusters, authorities are letting people know. And now those on the front lines are getting ready for more clusters to pop up.
We are definitely feeling that. We have seen increased cases, but I think we have our emergency preparedness team ready to go, so we're not caught off guard as we were in the spring.
On Monday, widespread and free testing gets underway here. Reporting live in Winthrop, I'm Ted Wayman, WCVB.
In Lawrence County, Ohio, there is a coronavirus outbreak at the Heartland of Riverview Nursing Home. That information is from the Lawrence County Health Department. Reportedly, this nursing home is conducting contact tracing. According to the Ohio Department of Health, 20 residents and 6 staff members have been infected with COVID-19. This Thursday, we received reports of a massive COVID-19 outbreak at a nursing home in Paramus, New Jersey. This new outbreak at this Deldridge Health and Rehabilitation Center, it has caused 2 residents to die, and 36 residents and 5 staff members have been infected with COVID-19 at this nursing home. Right now, state and local officials are investigating this matter to at least try to figure out what happened, what went wrong here. And this new outbreak comes as New Jersey is seeing a second wave of coronavirus infections. This is causing a resurgence in sickness and also a rise in hospitalizations. In the entire state of New Jersey, 164 nursing homes currently have coronavirus outbreaks. Today, both New Jersey and New York reported 2,000 coronavirus cases. Today, the Belleville News-Democrat published a report about a huge COVID-19 outbreak at the Southwestern Illinois nursing home. Reportedly, 129 new COVID cases have been added within the past week. So that's the current situation on nursing homes. But the situation in prisons is also concerning. take a listen to this. This is a news report from the Keoland Media Group in Sioux Falls, South Dakota.
The state penitentiary is dealing with a COVID-19 outbreak. Yesterday, the state penitentiary had 39 positive cases among inmates. That number jumped to 162 today. Positive cases are also growing at the Mike Durfee State Prison in Springfield. There are now nearly 300 positive cases compared to the 163 reported yesterday. This comes after mass testing earlier this week for inmates at both facilities.
This Friday, Christian Boone at the Atlanta Journal-Constitution published this piece. Here's the headline, quote, Floyd County Jail inmates and employees test positive for coronavirus, end quote. Now, when the first wave of the coronavirus transpired, it reportedly missed this jail. Now it is being hit by the second wave. There are about 600 inmates at this prison in Floyd County, Georgia. On Thursday this week, Floyd Sheriff Tim Burkhalter announced that at least 15 inmates and 7 employees have tested positive for the coronavirus at this prison, which in all that would be 22 people. Sheriff Burkhalter says others may potentially be infected as well. This outbreak has triggered the prison's Code Red phase, which is part of their coronavirus pandemic preparedness plan. The sheriff has said in a statement, quote, "We are doing everything we can to isolate and control this. Some of the extra precautions we are taking include limiting inmate movements within and outside the facility and temporarily suspending some of our non-essential inmate work details. Additionally, we will restrict inmate boarding from other counties, but will continue accepting new arrestees from local agencies," end quote. In Moravia, New York, the Cayuga prison reports that 44 inmates now have the coronavirus. And something else that happened this week, I feel that you should know about, is that a federal judge essentially grilled these officials. Courtesy to Katie Mulvaney, who broke the story at the Providence Journal. Katie Mulvaney reports, quote, "A federal judge on Thursday grilled the head warden of the Donald W. Wyatt detention facility about what he was doing to keep immigration and customs enforcement detainees and other detainees safe amid a coronavirus outbreak at the Central Falls prison. A report filed Thursday in the U.S. District Court indicates that 63 detainees across several pods and 10 staff have active cases, up 13 from earlier in the week. None of those cases are ICE detainees, Wyatt Warden Daniel W. Martin revealed in testimony that the prison and health officials have been unable to pinpoint through contact tracing how the virus got into the prison. He suspected the outbreak is linked to either auditors from the U.S. Marshals who were inspecting the facility at times without masks, or to an asymptomatic Wyatt employee," end quote. The U.S. District Court Judge Mary McElroy said, quote, This came in from outside. Whatever you're doing isn't working," end quote. In response, Martin revealed that while the prison encourages mask wearing and social distancing, quote, he didn't not require it, end quote. Ms. Mulvaney continues in her reporting, quote, "He said he had seen officers wearing their mask incorrectly. In response, the judge says, quote, why are you not enforcing these things? Martin responds, quote, we're trying to keep a balance between their health and safety and maintaining access to the law library, phones, and recreation, end quote. Then under questioning by the ACLU lawyer, Natalie A. Bennett, Martin conceded that there is an outbreak underway at the facility among its 545 detainees. Quote, sir, you are the leader. The buck stops with you. Mr. Martin then responds, am I happy 63 detainees have COVID? No. End quote. Mr. Martin also indicates that he didn't tell the ICE detainees about the outbreak, about this coronavirus outbreak at this prison until Wednesday night. The ACLU lawyer then asked, was he aware that experts are forecasting that the next 6 to 12 weeks may be the darkest to date during the pandemic? Reportedly, Martin is not keeping up with the coronavirus cases in Rhode Island and was not aware of the rising hospitalizations in the state as well. At least that's according to him. Here's one more reporting from that piece. Quote, are officers required to work in one specific unit to limit exposure? So this is the ACLU lawyer asking Martin. Martin then responds. He replied that officers will fill in other units when someone calls in sick. End quote. But this is how the hearing ended. Martin says, quote, we encourage the patients to always wear their mask and we're constantly reminding them. End quote. So that's how that went. We're going to keep an eye on that story because the hearing will continue before that same judge this Wednesday after they were grilled by her. When you're looking at the coronavirus, not from prisons and nursing homes, when you're looking at it from statewide and nationally of how we're doing, yesterday, Arkansas reported 1,200 coronavirus cases. On Monday this week, 2 state representatives in Arkansas tested positive for COVID-19. Also, more than 40 school districts are in the red zone because of the coronavirus. Just astonishing. Yesterday, David Goodhue reported at the Miami Herald, quote, at the end of business day Friday, the Miami-Dade County school system reported its confirmed cases of COVID-19 had topped 200. Actual cases are likely significantly higher because there is a lag between when a student or staff member self-reports to the individual and when the Florida Department of Health confirms the diagnosis. Only then does the case get placed on the Miami-Dade Public School District's online coronavirus dashboard. End quote. This Wednesday, the mayor of Albuquerque, New Mexico, he announced some new coronavirus enforcements. And the governor of New Mexico, Governor Michelle Lujan Grisham, she later followed up with that earlier this week. I believe this happened yesterday. This transpired yesterday. And what happened was the governor of New Mexico, she enforced some coronavirus. She laid out some new coronavirus enforcements as well. The same thing that the mayor of New Mexico has done. This has already driven protests and backlash. But they have done this because coronavirus hospitalizations and coronavirus cases are continuing to rise exponentially in the state of New Mexico. I mean, just yesterday, New Mexico reported 875 coronavirus cases. According to the Santa Fe NewMexican.com, quote, New Mexico set single-day record with 875 cases. That article goes on, quote, the spiraling outbreak has mirrored a surge across the Mountain West, leading to tighter restrictions on travel and commerce. Still, the numbers have continued to rise. In New Mexico, 264 people were hospitalized on Saturday, up from 229 on Friday. Overall, 80% of the state's general hospital beds and 76% of intensive care beds were full, health officials said. Quote, the virus is spreading because New Mexicans are giving the virus opportunities to spread, said Nora Myers Sackett, a spokeswoman for the governor's office. Quote, the tools to stop the spread of COVID-19 remain the same. It has never been more critical than that every one of us buckle down and use them. Sackett urged residents to stay home except for absolutely necessary outings. If you must go out, wear a mask, she said. So this is the current situation in New Mexico. We are seeing a rise in hospitalizations and a rise in coronavirus cases. And so this is essentially why these new coronavirus enforcements have now been laid out. Now, according to reporting from KRQE, this is actually what these coronavirus enforcements mean. Listen to this. This is their news reporting from earlier this week.
Retailers, including grocery stores, now have to close by 10 o'clock under the governor's latest mandate or face a citation. And starting today, the city is ramping up its enforcement to make sure businesses are in compliance with the public health order. News 13's Stephanie Chavez shows us.
There are additional measures that we think will slow the spread while keeping the economy viable.
Governor Michelle Lujan Grisham announcing on Tuesday more updates to the public health order.
Effective Friday, October 23rd, all retail spaces must close by 10 p.m. every night.
Friday night, we checked on various stores in Albuquerque to see if they were in compliance with the latest rule. Target on Paseo del Norte did close their doors at 10. Walgreens on Central in Nob Hill has a sign on their door explaining they'll be closing at 10, though pharmacies are exempt from the rule.
Retail is not pharmacy, so anybody who needs those services, no matter what time it is, those are still available. So this is basic retail shopping, healthcare, and necessary supplies would be exempt from the standard.
Starting today, the city of Albuquerque is beefing up educational and enforcement efforts across the city.
Every city department is going out, and we're going to be visiting big box departments, retail stores, grocery stores, breweries, distilleries, parks, anywhere where there's large gatherings.
About 20 inspectors from the fire marshal's office will be out and about reminding people of the new requirements.
There's no specific area code. We want everybody in the city of Albuquerque to understand and be educated on the public health orders so we can all do our parts.
But only APD and state police can issue citations.
If we do get those complaints, we'll go out there, give them a warning, a notice of violation, and a follow-up by APD to write a citation if necessary.
Stephanie Chavez, KRQE News 13.
Meanwhile, we are seeing an exponential increase in coronavirus cases in North Dakota. Right now, North Dakota has more than 37,000 coronavirus cases and more than 460 deaths. Today, North Dakota reported 851 new coronavirus cases and reportedly 8 deaths. According to the Grand Forks Herald, deaths continue as active COVID-19 cases slow down in North Dakota. So that is a good sign, because what we're seeing just earlier this week was coronavirus cases in North Dakota just surging. As you can see you can't really see but I'm looking at this map here, and the cases are just continuing to go up. The Navajo Nation today reported 64 coronavirus cases. If you recall, in the earlier stages of the coronavirus pandemic, the Navajo Nation was a pretty huge hotspot for coronavirus cases. According to COP4 News, quote, the Navajo Department of Health reported 64 new COVID-19 cases and no additional deaths Saturday. The total number of confirmed coronavirus cases for the Navajo Nation has reached 11,217, with 7,466 recoveries. The death toll remains at 574, and that death toll reporting 574 was as of Monday. I believe that was earlier this week. The Salt Lake Tribune has this headline today, quote, Utah's hospitals prepare to ration care as a record number of coronavirus patients flood their ICUs. According to this reporting, quote, with new coronavirus cases shattering records on a daily basis, Utah's hospitals are expected to begin rationing care in a week or two. That's the prediction of Greg Bell, president of the Utah Hospital Association, who said administrators of the state's hospitals confronted Governor Gary Herbert on Thursday with a grim list criteria they propose doctors should use if they are forced to decide whether patients can stay in an overcrowded intensive care unit. Under the criteria which would require Herbert's approval, patients who are getting worse despite receiving intensive care would be moved out first. In the event that two patients' conditions are equal, the young get priority over the old, since older patients are more likely to die. Quote, we told him, it's like we're going to have to request those be activated if this trend continues, and we see no reason why it won't. End quote. Hospitalizations normally rise after the number of new cases increases, and Utah repeatedly set new records for daily total cases just last week. At least 2 Utah hospitals have opened overflow ICUs just this month. End quote. So that's the current situation in Utah as coronavirus cases are continuing to rise. Right now in Wisconsin, we are seeing a rise in coronavirus cases. Again, we have been seeing this for a very long time. Today, Wisconsin reported 8 deaths and 95 hospitalized in Wisconsin due to COVID-19 since yesterday, which would be Saturday. Wisconsin is now approaching 200,000 coronavirus cases at an all-time high right now. The situation there is just absolutely dire. Wisconsin health officials report 25 COVID-19 deaths and more than 4,000 new coronavirus cases, according to the Post-Crescent. Quote, Wisconsin health officials on Saturday reported 4,000 plus new confirmed cases of COVID-19 and 25 more deaths. Saturday's 4,062 positive cases made up 23% of the 17,620 test results reported by the Wisconsin Department of Health. The 7-day average of new cases rose again Saturday, going from 3,470 to 4,050, which is the highest weekly average to date. Right now, the situation in El Paso, Texas, according to NBC News, El Paso, Texas, is seeing 300% rise in COVID hospitalizations. People urged to stay home for at least 2 weeks. Quote, if we continue on this trend, we risk detrimental effects to our entire healthcare system, a public health official said. This article was written by Tim Stella at NBC News. He writes, quote, El Paso, Texas is turning its convention center into a field hospital and asking residents to stay home for 2 weeks after the city recorded a 300% increase in hospitalizations. This is less than a month, officials said Sunday. The spike in hospitalizations came as much of the United States saw a rise in spread of the coronavirus, including Texas neighbor New Mexico, where a record 4,252 new cases were reported just last week, according to Johns Hopkins Coronavirus Resource Center. In El Paso, Texas, a border city of more than 680,000 people, the number of hospitalizations recorded in the last 3 weeks jumped from 259 to 786, according to the city's director of public health, Angela Mora. In a statement, Mora warned that the local health services and hospitals will remain strained for people suffering from non-coronavirus emergencies like heart attacks, strokes, and car accidents. She says in a statement, quote, if we continue on this trend, we risk detrimental effects to our entire healthcare system. For the sake of those hospitalized and those frontline healthcare workers working tirelessly each day to take care for them, we ask you to please stay home for 2 weeks and eliminate your interactions with those outside of your household until we can flatten the curve. End quote. According to this article by NBC News, people who don't follow new local health orders requiring masks and social distancing will face fines, the public health department said in a news release. Coronavirus hospitalizations and infections in the United States, they are continuing to surge. That comes as we learned just earlier today that at least 5 of Vice President Mike Pence's aides have tested positive for COVID-19. The current situation here in the United States is dire. We're going to have lots of links on the coronavirus as we're seeing a rise in hospitalizations in states all over the country on our website. We'll be right back. We have much more ahead tonight. Stay with us. Hey TJPS listeners, even though this is a presidential election, there are many more candidates on the ballots besides the president. Go to Ballot Ready for a nonpartisan guide to your entire ballot. From there, you can compare candidates based on their stances on issues, biographical information, or even endorsements. And then you can save your choices to use when you vote by mail or go to the voting booth. You can even request your absentee ballot or make a plan to vote early on Election Day. This year, with changes to polling places and vote-by-mail laws as a result of the coronavirus pandemic, it's more important than ever to have a plan to vote. Local elected officials affect our lives every day. They decide who to prosecute, monitor the quality of our drinking water, and choose the leadership of our schools. 30% of voters take the time to vote and then leave some part of their ballots essentially blank. This is a missed opportunity to choose the leaders of our communities. It's okay if you're unfamiliar with some of the more local positions. We recommend hosting a ballot party. Get together with your friends over Zoom, FaceTime, Facebook, split up the research and go through your ballots together. Go to ballotready.org for more information and enter your address to plan to vote and vote informed. Once again, that is ballotready.org. At approximately 5:36 p.m., on March 27, 1964, also known as Good Friday, the earth began to shake, just as many as Alaskans were sitting down for dinner. Eyewitnesses delineate those scenes as hearing a crunching, grinding noise as the earth shook. According to History.com, quote, they recalled seeing an asphalt roads rise and fall like waves, and the ground opening and closing before them, water shooting up through the ensuing cracks. The violent shaking led to water, sewer, and gas line breaks, and widespread telephone and electrical failures. It effortlessly toppled telephone poles, buckled railroad trucks, split roads in half, uprooted buildings, cars, and docks, and tore homes apart. Seismic waves caused the earth to ring like a bell. Alaska, on March 27th, 1964, they had just had a 9.2 magnitude earthquake. Listen to the news reporting at the time.
Anchorage, largest town in Alaska, lay devastated after the earthquake and tidal wave. The blow struck at 5:45 in the afternoon when the streets were full of people going home from work. Within minutes, the town was a ruin. What the effect must have been on the population, only those who have been in an earthquake can imagine. When these films were taken, the immediate horror had passed, and there was time to search for the scores still missing and for belongings buried somewhere in that awful chaos. For a time, Anchorage had no power, light, or water. The news as we receive these pictures is that some part of the public services has been restored. Damage to the whole area affected is estimated by the governor of Alaska, William Egan, to exceed 125 million pounds. The number of people killed is about 100. Great fissures were torn in the earth by the quake, which seismic instruments recorded as being of quite unusual severity. President Johnson has declared Anchorage and its surroundings to be a disaster area. All possible federal aid is being organized.
Well, earlier this week, Alaska had another earthquake. This one was a 7.5, so it was not as gargantuan as the one that transpired back in 1964. But this earthquake is more like the one that happened in 1958 at Latoya Bay. This Alaska earthquake was a 7.8. This took place on July 9th. The earthquake that transpired this week was a 7.5 magnitude earthquake. It was near Alaska. It triggered a tsunami warning. According to reporting from NBC News, quote, a tsunami warning was issued for southern Alaska on Monday after a major earthquake and large aftershock hit the near Alaskan peninsula. The warning was later downgraded to an advisory by the National Weather Service. An initial earthquake with a 7.5 magnitude occurred around Sandpoint, Alaska, a city on one of the Shumagon Islands, just before 1 p.m. local time, 5 p.m. Eastern time, according to the U.S. official U.S. Geological Survey. An aftershock hit the area about 20 minutes later after a magnitude of 5.8. The National Weather Service issued a tsunami warning for the Pacific coast from Kennedy Entrance, Alaska, to Unamik Pass, Alaska. Police in Homer, Alaska, asked anyone in the potential flooding zone to move to higher ground immediately in fear of a potential tsunami hitting them. Once again, according to this reporting, a powerful, and also earlier in this summer, a powerful 7.8 magnitude earthquake hit Alaska. So that would be the same as what happened in 1958 at Latoya Bay. That massive earthquake transpiring. Also triggering fears of a possible tsunami warning, that same thing that transpired in July when that 7.8 earthquake hit. But once again, earlier this week, Alaska had a 7.5 magnitude earthquake. Just absolutely large. We'll be right back. Much more ahead.
At a time when we're asked to sacrifice, we step up to do our part. On the home front, on the front lines, to lend a helping hand and hold each other up. We are resilient, vigilant, and we'll get through this because we're better together, even if we're a little farther apart.
Hey, TJPS listeners, on tomorrow on the Jeremiah Patterson Show YouTube channel, I will be publishing a special report on the Colorado wildfires. Also, the wildfires that are taking place still in California, Oregon, and other parts of the country. This has not been getting nearly as much national attention as it should be. It was in the national spotlight for a minute, then it essentially just came out of the national spotlight. Because of all the news that's been breaking around the political news and the political controversy right now that we are in an election year. But I will have a special report for you guys tomorrow on the Jeremiah Patterson Show YouTube channel, so make sure to watch out for that. And please listen, that report is important. We'll be right back. Welcome back. If you are watching the news this week, this is something definitely to watch for. We are now on the lookout for a potential and what could be a hurricane by Wednesday. We're now watching Tropical Storm Zeta. According to NPR.org, quote, Gulf Coast braces as Tropical Storm Zeta poised to become a hurricane. According to this news broke today, quote, a tropical storm stalled over the Caribbean Sea is poised to drop heavy rain on the U.S. Gulf Coast within the next few days. Forecasters say it's likely to move in the northwest direction and strengthen into a hurricane by the time it hits the southern U.S. on Wednesday. Beginning as a depression east of Mexico, the storm quickly strengthened and was named Tropical Storm Zeta. The storm was nearly stationary Sunday, dropping water over the open ocean and causing downpours in nearby Jamaica and Honduras, bringing maximum sustained winds of 50 miles per hour. Mexico is already bracing for impact. The government of Mexico has issued a hurricane warning for the Yucatan Peninsula from Tulum to Rio Lagartos. As the 27th named storm of the season, Zeta only gives 2020 the distinction of having the second highest number of named storms. Only 2005 was more tempestuous, with 28 named storms. Once again, this news breaking just today, potentially another hurricane just by Wednesday of this week, we could potentially have another hurricane. According to the National Hurricane Center, quote, number 1, tropical storm conditions are expected in portions of northern Yucatan Peninsula of Mexico Monday night and early Tuesday, with hurricane conditions possible. Tropical storm conditions could occur over extreme western Cuba on Monday. Through Wednesday, heavy rainfall is expected from Zeta across portions of central and western Cuba, the Cayman Islands, Jamaica, the northeast Yucatan Peninsula of Mexico, southern Florida, and the Keys. This rainfall may lead to flash floods in urban areas. Zeta could be at or just below hurricane strength when it approaches the northern Gulf Coast on Wednesday and could bring storm surge rainfall and wind impacts to areas from Louisiana to the Florida Panhandle. Residents in these areas should monitor the progress of Zeta and updates to the forecast. End quote. Once again, reporting from the National Hurricane Center and also by NPR.org on a potential another hurricane by this Wednesday. I just want to note it is just absolutely devastating that Louisiana could potentially be hit again. I mean, they have just been hit by Hurricane Laura, which they are still recovering from. They have just been hit by Hurricane Delta, which they are still recovering from. So this news of them potentially being impacted again is just diametrically terrifying. We're going to keep an eye on the story. We're going to have more reporting on our website on this information. Lots is happening right now. We'll be right back. The last note is next.
Hey Google.
More than 100 billion words
are translated every day.
Lift your hand.
Thank you very much for your help.
Words about food. Words about friendship. About sport. About belief. About fear.
Oh my God!
Words that can hurt and sometimes divide. But every day, the most translated words in the world are how are you? Thank you. And I love you.
In 1918, the United States entered World War I, and it was horrific. And after World War I, after more than 116,000 Americans died, after that just horrific experience, President Woodrow Wilson at the time, he had this new idea. He's like, okay, my new idea is the League of Nations. And so the founders of the League of Nations, they were desperate to avoid another horrific war just like that we had just experienced, all of us, internationally and here in the United States. And so President Woodrow Wilson came up with the League of Nations. Ultimately, 42 nations were on it with him, but when it came to the Senate in the United States, it was rejected. So 25 years later, we tried again. We did not come up with the League of Nations, but we came up with something else. It was called the United Nations. It was an international organization. It was called the United Nations. It was founded in 1945. And the first president to give a speech at the new United Nations, at this new international peace organization, was President Harry S. Truman in 1945 in San Francisco, California.
There were many who doubted that agreement could ever be reached by these 50 countries, differing so much in race and religion, language and culture. But these differences were all forgotten in one unshakable unity of determination to find a way to end war.
Yesterday, the United Nations turned 75 years old. It reached its 75th anniversary. And I'm telling you this story because of what has just transpired this week. The United Nations chief has called for an end to reported police brutality in Nigeria. And according to this article by news.un.org, quote, according to witnesses, Nigerian security forces opened fire on Tuesday night in Africa's largest city as protesters continued over a now disbanded and discredited police unit known as the Special Anti-Robbery Squad, or otherwise known as SARS. The government has pledged to carry out further police reforms and improve police accountability. A curfew has been imposed on Lagos and other parts of Nigeria, which reports that tensions continued into Wednesday with police across the city firing shots into the air in an effort to disperse protesters who were defying the order to stay off the streets. The UN chief expressed his condolences to the families of the bereaved. My apology, I'm not sure that's how you say that. Let me spell it out here. Bereaved. And wished a speedy recovery to those injured. Earlier this week, we got a news report out of KINS 5 News. This was actually transpired yesterday in San Antonio, Texas.
Civil unrest in Nigeria has caught the world's attention. Thousands taking to the streets protesting police brutality, and it's led to clashes between demonstrators and security forces. Today, the Nigerian People's Association of San Antonio held the protest downtown, hoping to spread a message of peace. Eyewitness News reporter Zach Briggs has that story.
We want a new Nigeria where mothers, fathers, and children can live in peace.
Violent unrest in Nigeria has spawned international outcry for social change. Here in San Antonio, they're calling for an end to the African country's controversial Special Anti-Robbery Squad, otherwise known as SARS.
Over the decades, there have been many complaints about human rights violations, extortion, abuse, police brutality to the nth degree.
2 weeks of protest escalated on Tuesday when security forces opened fire on demonstrators, killing at least 12. That's according to Amnesty International. Destruction of property and clashes with police have since ensued, prompting a global call for peace and reform. For Texas native T.G. Montague, this is personal.
I have, grandparents, family that are all still over there. And this is something that is a harsh reality for them.
And what's happening in Nigeria has brought about comparisons to protests against police brutality in the United States.
It's very parallel, whether it's George Floyd or whether it's the protesters there. There is a spirit of protest that's brewing all over the world. People are fed up. They are fed up with their governments letting them down.
Zach Briggs, KENS 5 Eyewitness News.
Once again, a protest breaking out in Nigeria, causing the same thing to happen here in the United States in San Antonio, Texas. I'm sorry for that delay here. I was just hearing an echo through my mic. The sound cut out. But another thing that transpired yesterday, completely unrelated to what's transpiring in Nigeria, was at least 24 people were killed, including children, in a suicide attack in Afghan Capital. NPR reported on this. According to NPR, quote, officials in Afghanistan say at least 24 people are dead, including school children, from a suicide attack outside of an education center in the capital of Kabul. The country's interior ministry confirmed that more than 57 others were wounded Saturday after explosion went off in a heavily Shiite neighborhood. The Associated Press reported. Interior Ministry spokeswoman Tariq Aran said the attacker attempted to enter the center but was stopped by security guards, according to the Associated Press. The attacker then set off the explosives in a nearby alley, the agency France Press reported. Reuters is citing Iran identified the target of the attack, which reportedly took place at this education center. The center offers training and courses for higher education students, the AFP reports. The western Kabul neighborhood where the bombing occurred has a large Shiite community, a minority group in the country that has been targeted by the Islamic State in the past. The Islamic State took responsibility for the attack, though it did not provide any evidence, Reuters is reporting. The Taliban has denied any responsibility for this bombing. The attack came amid intensifying fighting between Afghan forces and the Taliban, even as the two sides engage in peace talks. Those talks were spurred by a peace deal agreed by the United States and Taliban in February that would pave the way for the eventual withdrawal of U.S. forces in the country. Once again, reportedly a suicide attack that transpired just yesterday in the Afghan capital. At least 24 people are dead, including school children, and have now died in this suicide attack. We're going to keep an eye on the story for you. If there are any other further developments on the story, we'll make sure to post it on our website. But thank you for listening to this episode of the Jeremiah Patterson Show. I really appreciate it. Thank you again for listening. We'll see you again next Saturday on the Jeremiah Patterson Show. Also remember, this Thursday on the Jeremiah Patterson Show, that TJPS special report on the situation in immigration detention facilities will be published. But also something to watch out for this week. Tomorrow, Judge Amy Coney Barrett may soon become Justice Amy Coney Barrett, being confirmed to the Supreme Court of the United States. The Senate has voted to advance that, and they will vote on her tomorrow. Thank you for listening to this episode of the Jeremiah Patterson Show. Have a great day. Remember to stay positive and inspired. We'll see you this Saturday.